Explained by the Billy Meier Contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more, compiled by David Chance, revised July 2, 2025.
Future Earth Humans Part 3. See also Gilgamesh. See also Hyperborea, Hyperborean. See also Ecostone. See also Longskulls. See also Men in Black. See also Nazca Lines. See also Nocodemian. See also Partar. See also Quetzalcoatl. See also Rod. See also Starchild Skull. See also Teos Caves Metal Library. See also Tunguska Event 1908. See also UFOs Flying Saucers.
Contact Report 31. A note from Contact Report 248. Billy, as you know, I have always had difficulties with millions and billions, which I, the devil knows why, often confused with one another. Now, the same problem has arisen with light years and kilometers. In previous conversations with you and Simyase, with regard to the Great Journey, etc., there was often talk of nonillions and decillions, with respect to distances. With this, kilometers were always meant, but I, the dope, have then always said and written light years. Tar, 71. These data, indeed, did not concern light years, but rather kilometers.
The camera is a product of your technology, and it was acquired by one of us.
You surprise me. You must have gone into our villages or cities then.
Is that so strange?
I always see you in your suits, and with these clothes neither you nor any of yours could step into the eyes of the dear Earth humans.
Sure, but we also have clothes of your type. We need these because we move amongst you here and there, naturally shielded from swinging waves, so that we won't be harmed by the swinging waves of the Earth humans. However, we can only do this for a short period each time. We don't have identity papers of your kind, because we don't need such things in that form. Should it happen, however, that we get asked for such documents, then we are able to adjust this by influencing thoughts. This adjusting takes place through the power of our thoughts, by which a mock appearance is created for the concerned questioner, and information from actual persons of your world is simulated for him or her. An eventual police officer, etc., would thereby get the impression that he or she had some documents in hand, etc., and that he or she was verifying them.
That is deceit, Simyase.
No, it deals only with the creation of a hallucination, if you want to call it that.
One of the highest mountains, as far as I know, is Chimborazo in Ecuador.
Surely, and by calling it, you have named the highest mountain on Earth. This mountain is indeed surrounded by many myths and legends, and in earlier times has played a very important role in the activities of extraterrestrial intelligences. This he has done, but please don't call him Ptah, dear God, because this always evokes in us painful memories of the very early times of our history. We have indeed maintained the designation of Ishwish, but it has acquired a completely new meaning for us. There certainly are still many subtle differences which can be perceived between ordinary persons and Ishwishes or other advanced life forms. But everything is still fundamentally aligned towards there occurring no more differences in appearance, so that each life form is equal in value to any other.
But now I have a question. Do you speak any other language besides the one we are using now?
Yes, some English and Greek, naturally also Swiss German and some Bawi.
The old Greek form of the language?
No, the new Greek.
That is very good because I have also mastered that language. We will be able to speak in this language then, and I won't need to use my translator device.
Of course you cannot know this. My father doesn't speak a word of German. What he has spoken until now was our own language. But you see the small device on his belt there. That is a language transformer, a language converter or translator as you would call it. With this language device, we can transform one language into another and make it understandable to both. But we like very much to speak in other languages and gladly bypass these technical means when there is an opportunity.
From somewhere, an android appears, bringing the camera. Very cleverly, it builds it into a frame and adjusts it to fit. Suddenly, the thing speaks to me, and once more I am utterly astounded, though I cannot understand a word. Sim-Ya-Se quickly enlightens me.
It wishes you good luck.
But that cannot be. This thing cannot think and act independently. That would be crazy.
But nevertheless it does. Its whole body is half organic, and its brain biochemical organic. We have completely different characters ourselves. Sure, look, you can see the characters of our alphabet in these letterings here.
Now I have it, Sim-Ya-Se, but I still lack the umlauts, etc. Are there also any such pronunciation keys of this kind?
In our language, these do not exist.
I make the interesting observation that Sim-Ya-Se's face is suddenly seized with a slight red, obviously in reaction to the words just spoken. Secretly, I am delighted by this, for now I know for certain that she is influenced by feelings, even though she has always been cleverly able to hide them. Apparently, one only had to touch the right place to make her lose control over her feelings. But now I have one more question about your script. How old is it actually, and where does it come from?
That is very easy to explain, because these characters that we use today are only 11,000 years old. We took them over at that time from our ancestors who lived on the Earth. Our old characters were very complicated, while these now are very simple. It was developed by several of our scientists who were on the Earth at the time, who used constellations as seen from Earth as templates. They connected certain constellations with lines and obtained the characters' shapes as a result. Our script consists of small circles and lines, being that the circles represent stars and the lines just connect them.
That's interesting, and your explanation is enough for me. I am only surprised by the fact that this script is no longer known on Earth.
It has simply fallen into oblivion after it was adopted by your Earth-human ancestors and was used during a few centuries, during which, however, it was modified in many ways. Only a few of the Earth-human alphabets today have characters which trace back to ours, before they were modified and made unrecognizable.
That's amazing. So the writing was not developed and put into use by the Earth humans themselves?
If you speak of the earthbound forefathers of your human races and not of the sons of heaven, then you are correct. Because the script was first brought to earth by the sons of heaven, that is, by those who were actually responsible for the original arising of today's Earth humans. And since I am already speaking of this, I want to ask you something before we jump into null time, the timeless, or in the eternity as you call it, for 7 minutes, which will happen in a few minutes. The perceptions there are completely different from the ones that are normal in material life. For that reason, it is also not possible for us to impinge and receive your thoughts and feelings, because we are still in the process of consciousness-related and spiritual evolution. Therefore, neither I nor my father, nor any of us, will be able to reproduce for you later your feelings and thoughts, so that you may write them down yourself. If nevertheless you wish to do this, there is a technology-based possibility.
Of course I am interested in remembering all my feelings and thoughts, but am I not able to do this myself?
Yes, of course. But you know that your remembering ability is not so highly developed that you can repeat longer memories word for word. That is also not the case with us, which is why we need technical means to reproduce words from symbols and impulses, which then can also be transmitted to you telepathically, and which you are able to write down in your own words then, that you form from the impulses and symbols. For this reason, the words that are written are not exactly and literally the ones that were spoken, but they still represent the exact meaning of what was said, which you, according to the impulses and symbols, dress in your own words. The cabins, which you can see there, beside the screens, are equipped with all necessary means to capture empfindungen, feelings, and thoughts. The collected impulses are automatically stored in a special computer and may later be reproduced by it according to convenience. The adjustable and fully adaptable helmet that you see there is fitted with very fine probes and also encompasses a special sensor network in the form of a fine mesh, which intercepts all types of energies and converts them into impulses, which are then forwarded to the computer where they are registered. The captured energy from the thoughts, feeling, empfindungen, etc., is grounded in very high values and can only be held by this equipment. The energies of empfindungs, feelings, and thoughts exist in this form of transmission only in the realm of hyperfrequencies. To be able to register your thoughts, feelings, and empfindungs, it's just necessary that you sit yourself in the chair and lay your head under the helmet cap, which will then adapt itself automatically to it.
Following Simya-Ase's instructions, I promptly sit down in the extremely comfortable chair inside one of the 3 cabins. As soon as I am seated, a peculiar helmet moves over my head and settles down silently. It is so large that it encompasses my whole head, only leaving my face open so that I can see out from it and watch everything. But the helmet does not touch my head, rather lying equally close all around and staying about 1.5 centimeters away from my skull, as I can feel when I place a forefinger between the helmet and my head. Man, what are you doing, Asket? Whata you give me a kiss on the cheek? Girl, what's with that? I always thought that this would be a thing that is only done on Earth.
But I see that a change has occurred. I'm sorry.
You mean my arm?
Yes. I could have a device made for you, which would completely replace your arm. A semi-organic apparatus. I had not really thought I allowed myself to be guided by my compassion alone.
With us, both sexes are acknowledged as both equally valuable and entitled.
We too are only plain human creatures, in which feelings move. For my own interest, I have occupied myself with photography. Besides, in the whole universe, there are life forms that look deceptively similar to each other, whereby a person can be mistaken for someone else. You call this doppelganger?
Asket, Nera, and Simya-Se stand together, and I take more photos now. Unlike Simya-Se, Asket and Nera don't wear spacesuits, but normal clothes, which are actually quite different from those I know of Earthwomen's clothing. But they all are very well dressed with them.
You let feelings germinate in me thereby, which are not of a joyful nature, and which arouse impulses of a rebuking kind. It should finally be noted that by earthly standards, we are very advanced life forms, and we can no longer move among such low understanding-based levels as the Earth humans find themselves in. This doesn't represent presumption from us, but rather a law of the creation. Like it is with us, it is with all life forms, also the Earth human beings. Besides us, there are still several other extraterrestrial intelligences moving in the terrestrial space, who, however, stand in a much lower stage of evolution than our own, and who are developed ahead of the Earth humans by only a few centuries, and by only around 1,243 years of further development at most. These life forms are therefore able to come into contact with the average and somewhat more intelligent Earth humans and to communicate with them, which, however, happens only very rarely, if ever. Since these intelligences have not yet gone very far ahead of the Earth humanity in terms of development, they very often conduct themselves as rulers, and can even let themselves be misled and influenced by the Earth religions, which is why many higher developed life forms in the universe must intervene in a regulatory manner to prevent severe consequences. Because where religions are widespread, always after a very short time chaos, enslavement, exploitation, and consciousness enslavement rule, whereby all consciousness-based progress comes into question. Some Earth humans have taken possession of parts of contact report transcripts describing real, much earlier contacts with such extraterrestrial intelligences, and created new, imaginative stories, and formed religions and sects from them. Thus they stepped, or would have stepped, into the public and mendaciously claimed, or would have claimed, that they had or would have had contacts with extraterrestrial life forms. Other Earth humans allegedly, or in reality, received various inspiration-type messages from such low levels. That is to say, from meagerly developed in consciousness, terrestrial or extraterrestrial humans, adulterated these, or produced them unconsciously, or consciously and untruthfully. This also resulted in malicious fantasies that purely spiritual life forms would have gotten into contact with Earth humans, and would still be doing so. But this truly is not so, because purely spiritual forms only establish contact with life forms, which are very highly developed in spirit and in consciousness, as only these are able to receive their vibrations and can bring about the necessary understanding. So, if other claims are made by Earth humans, then these do not correspond to the truth, but rather to consciously or unconsciously deceitful fantasies. The fact is that very highly developed life forms, or even pure spirit forms, were since always never able to establish contact with Earth humans, unless they met an extraordinarily high spiritual and consciousness-related state, which led likewise to an extraordinarily high level, as it was the case with several true prophets. In each cosmic age, a world brings forth only very few of such highly developed in spirit and consciousness-based life forms. If the average form is still on a very low level of evolution, as it is the case with the Earth humans. On the other hand, these highly developed life forms of such worlds, the prophets, also appear only at certain times, when they are necessary. And on the Earth, this is the first time that such a case has occurred since nearly 2,000 years.
I thought you said that the device for photography was useless. I mean the one from Simyase. What about the one you want to make in collaboration? Do you think I will be able to take better pictures with it later, and that I won't always conflict with the grid frame?
I think the device will be good. But what do you mean by conflicting with the grid frame?
You know, the Simyase device is a bit complicated to photograph and a bit small. When I take a photo, I am always bothered by the small grid frame and the screen housing, and I always have that darn thing in the picture. I always have the half-oval shape of the frame appearing in the picture. Nevertheless. But won't you interfere with me again and spoil the pictures, like you did with the group shots?
Surely not, because I allow you to take photographs.
What are these things? What is it about these group shots?
I am not comfortable talking about it.
Have you lost control of yourself and committed an illogical act?
Yes, I am really displeased and embarrassed.
I see. That's why you do not want to talk about it. And I suppose you have also deliberately kept quiet about it?
Sure,
So you have been keeping something from me, Simyase?
I actually did because I was embarrassed in front of you.
Oh, look at that. So you can do that too? That is good news, because it makes you even more human and lovable in my eyes. But come on now, what cramp did you offer in the group shots?
I really do not want to talk about it.
This is not correct, Simyase.
I also think so. Look, you really don't have to be ashamed in front of us. Every human being might make mistakes. I am sure it also happens to your High Council. Or are you vain and feel your feminine vanity offended by revealing your cramped secret?
Vanity is really foreign to me. I am simply ashamed.
Please, you do not have to. You really do not believe me.
You are not going to laugh at me?
My very great word of honor.
Good. I I acted completely confused and lost all control over myself. I told you it is incomprehensible to me. I have really lost control of my actions. It is incomprehensible to me and also extremely embarrassing.
Do not get excited about it, girl. You have obviously just lost your head and suddenly started thinking with your feet. That can happen to anyone.
That was really very illogically acted by you. But the reason might be found in the fact that you had to face a completely unusual illogic, which you were not able to cope with. This led to a short circuit, so to speak, in your otherwise logical manner of thinking, which set off a veritable chain reaction of illogical actions, which could only be ended by running through their sequence of actions to the end.
Sure, it must be so, but I do not understand why I could act so irrationally.
That is very simple. A human being who thinks only logically can no longer imagine illogic at all. But if such an illogic approaches him or her, they are no longer able to overcome it with their logic and fall into a confusion. This confusion, however, triggers illogical conclusions that lead to such actions. These in turn have to die down before rational logic is able to break through again.
It was a wonderful pleasure for me to see you again. Farewell.
Ask it. What is it with you, girl? You are crying. What is it?
She is very sad, because you are a very good and dear friend to her.
Recently, it was explained to me that in various governments of our Earth, extraterrestrial intelligences are carrying on their activities and are even permanently employed there. What is this all about? Can we believe these statements?
You call such things fairy tales.
So this means that there are no star people working in our Earth governments?
That's what it says. If these statements were true, then peace would have come to Earth a long time ago, and earthly humanity would have been taught the truth by the governments. But since we extraterrestrial life forms, according to our directives, have no right to interfere forcibly in earthly affairs, we must confine ourselves to the form of selecting predetermined Earth humans for this purpose, in order to be able to transmit our knowledge through them.
But it is said that these extraterrestrials would secretly and undetected participate in or with government agencies.
This is also not so, which your logic itself can confirm. If it were really so, then within only a few days, no authority, no government, and no military power would hunt down our ships, because we actually have all possibilities to nip such things in the bud. If we were to be active in any governmental bodies, there would be peace on Earth. So all the claims are nothing more than lies, I mean, when such things are claimed by us or by any other extraterrestrials. Such lies are often due to religious machinations of some sectarian elements and of unscrupulous fantasists, liars, swindlers, and frauds. In truth, there are probably also malignant intelligences from outer space that haunt your Earth or stray there, but there are not so many of them that they would be of great significance. Most observations of flying discs with human predations are of terrestrial origin. Earth humans should be aware of this when they encounter any flying discs, whose occupants are well aware of the fact that very many human beings believe these objects to be of extraterrestrial origin. This knowledge is also very often exploited by them by imagining some gullible Earth humans as extraterrestrial intelligences. Aware of their religious power, they also do not shy away from pretending to be angels and God's messengers and appearing as saviors of Earth humans, whereby they then proclaim the deceived gullible to be contactors and assign them mysterious missions which are supposedly for the benefit of Earth humans, but which in reality only serve their own profit and the benefit of their own country's espionage. The most popular places of origin these malevolent deceptive elements and occupants of earthly flying discs name are Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. But also the nearest neighboring systems of your solar system have to serve for this, as well as the Pleiades in the coming time, when you will have become world famous through your contacts with us. In the process, my daughter, Simya-se, and my person will also be falsely accused of being contact beings with Earth humans who are fraudulent in this respect, as well as alleged Pleiades beings who do not exist. This system is from your homeworld, 1.73 billion, 1.730, 000, 000 The inhabitants of the NESAR system, the NESARENER, were a technically and consciously very highly developed people, and they formed a uniform race of humanoid form. For a period of 17,000 years, they lived in complete peace with each other, and with the races of the other systems known to them in their galaxy. Their evolution in consciousness and technology was very high, but unfortunately only in the knowledge of the use of their powers of consciousness. They did not possess a spiritual goal in and of itself, and they also had no knowledge of the creation. All their spiritual knowledge rested solely in the partial recognition and observance of the laws of nature. According to these, they acted correctly, but were unable to attain any spiritual goal. By omitting the most important factor of creation, they remained one-sided and exposed to the danger of being led into confusion by unreal consciousness. This danger was very great, and it grew constantly because the Nesarines moved very far away from their galaxy, in terms of research, and came into contact with intelligences which were completely foreign to them, and which imparted to them very foreign forms of thought and teachings as well as philosophies. As long as these were still compatible with the laws of nature, everything went well. But then it happened that 3 expedition ships of the Nesarines strayed into the SOL system through a false leap in hyperspace and found human life forms on Earth. That was exactly 1,067 years ago in Earth time. 908 AD. Very similar to Earth humans, they mingled with them and lived together with them for about 50 years, unrecognized and very interested in all earthly things. In particular, their attention fell on the religions dominating the Earth humans. With their highly developed technical possibilities, they collected everything attainable concerning the religions known to them, stored them in their apparatus, and allowed themselves to be very strongly influenced by them. Since their consciousness was only oriented towards natural law, but not also towards the creation, they very quickly found a false sense in the various earthly religions, but they became just as unaware of the false as Earth humans. They now saw another goal and eagerly endeavored to strive towards it. The religious influence thus gained by the Earth humans appeared to them to be of unusually great significance and importance. So they set out to find their home galaxy again, which they actually succeeded in doing after 4 long years of wandering about, to the chagrin of their whole and truly great home system and its inhabitants. The religions learned on Earth were spread and taught on all inhabited worlds, while a small armada of great spacers was sent to Earth to collect further data of the religions prevailing there. During 5 years, research was carried out in secret on Earth, and everything to do with the religions was registered. Then the expedition returned to the home galaxy. Once there, the expedition members discovered that various changes had taken place in the meantime. Houses of worship had been built on all worlds, and the human beings had become discontented. Despite these findings, the new data was evaluated and disseminated, and within another 50 years the entire great system was under the influence of various earthly religions. Human beings could no longer understand each other, and anyone of a different faith was accused of unreal teachings. Soon these insults led to evil accusations, to quarrels, and then to hatred. Families among themselves divided into different religious groups and beliefs, and then soon the first blood flowed. The family members began to fight and kill each other, and soon it was family against family. This spread to housing estates and whole residential areas, and suddenly it was everyone against everyone. What you call a civil war ensued after another 7 years. The high councils were completely powerless against this, because organizations such as the military, which could have brought order, were unknown in the whole NESAR system. In sudden realization of the madness of the religions, brought in from Earth, the rulers banned them. But it was already too late. The civil wars had already escalated into world wars, and soon the first worlds were destroyed. After another 3 years, a vicious, system-wide war of annihilation was underway, with the centers, the suns, being destroyed. Collapsing in on themselves, they tore into all the planetary systems with irresistible gavolt. A gigantic mass arose which took over everything that still existed. Eventually, the planets and stars were pulled into a whole heap and joined the huge mass. This is how the enormous structure you see there came into being. A destroyed solar and planetary system of enormous proportions, caused by religious madness, brought in as a deadly form from Earth. Here we are again, much further away from Earth than before. The distance to your home system is now 1,960 million light-years. This is the galaxy ASAP, and over there you see the world D-Som. It is a world inhabited by human forms, according to your time and values, living approximately in the Middle Ages. They live in larger villages, similar to those you have in the Oriental world. A second race from this world doesn't live in permanent houses. It is nomadic and builds huts out of plants and bushes.
Simyase is busy with various of her apparatuses, and also speaks into a device in a melodic language that is incomprehensible and completely foreign to me. Aha, but what language were you speaking earlier? I have never heard anything like that before, and it is absolutely alien to me.
It is a sign language that can be spoken.
I don't understand that. But a sign language can only be drawn or painted or written by certain movements and so on.
That is not so, because sign languages can actually also be spoken. To explain this to you in more detail would take a lot of time.
Besides, I'm not tired, hungry, or thirsty. So what is really being tinkered with?
Simyase did give you some of our fruits and also some vegetables to eat.
Of course, but that was a long time ago.
The vegetables and fruits of this kind are very nutritious and thirst-quenching compared to your produce. They can satisfy your hunger and thirst for up to 90 hours.
I accept this explanation, and it also seems to me to be as you say. But something is still wrong. Why am I not tired?
This is also very easy to explain. You breathe the same air here in the Realmer as we do. But this corresponds to the conditions on our home world and is much healthier and more invigorating than on Earth. The oxygen content is several values higher than on Earth, and there are also some differences in the composition of the other elements. But everything is as breathable for you as it is for ourselves. The different composition of our air, however, guarantees us a longer wakefulness and a much shorter need for sleep than is the case on Earth. That is the reason why you are not tired. You are taking your fun a bit far, my child.
Aha, so Simyase is just teasing me?
I was just teasing you a little bit.
Do you mean loosely along the lines of love likes to tease?
If you think of it in terms of friendship, then yes.
I am interested to know if there are worlds and life forms in the universe that are roughly equivalent to earthly norms.
Parallels can be found everywhere. For example, there are also worlds that are very similar to Earth, and on which there are also human life forms with almost the same development as Earth humans. One such world is found in the galaxy Aratom, in the system NEB, and the world is called KARTAG. KARTAG is 8 billion 8 trillion light-years from Earth, and the human beings living on this world are at war with each other. Their time is the time of nuclear use, and they are currently waging nuclear war.
And this is not being prevented by you?
It is not in our concerns to interfere there, because the system is under the control of a highly evolved life form that is trying to prevent disaster there. The Carthagian life forms, however, are at an important turning point in their evolution and at the end of their nuclear age. They are still destroying each other with nuclear bombs, but this will not last much longer. Foresight says that in less than 10 days, their war will be over, and they will join the decrees of the controlling intelligences.
So they are a little more evolved than Earth humans?
That is so. They take the final steps to pass through the barrier of unreason. Interventions may only be made when discernible catastrophes of galactic or intergalactic magnitude loom. What you see there is now Cartag. Now go with Simya Se. She will show you the world up close.
On Cartag with Simya Se. I thought you told me that the inhabitants of this world here were somewhat more advanced than Earth humans. I don't see any planes or anything. If they are throwing nukes at each other, they must have some, right?
You are wrong. Their flying apparatuses do not meet the standards of terrestrial aircraft because they are already beamship-like. They also do not drop their death projectiles from their flying apparatus, but shoot them up into space with rockets and then steer them back down towards the enemy. The rockets are similar to those used on Earth to shoot up satellites. Only their technology and propulsion forces are fundamentally different from those on the Earth. But now see the city ahead and look here on the screen. We want to take you to the galaxy Baberus, to the world Niebuhr in the system Cress.
Where is that and what's interesting there?
It is 9,380 million light-years from Earth. This galaxy was in very early times a favorite destination of many races who became proficient in space travel. There are many planets there, which you on Earth call primordial worlds, and which are inhabited by many animal forms. Often these animals are very gigantic and of unusually large growth. They exceed all normal standards of like animals on other primordial worlds in the universe. And this very fact attracted very many space races to these worlds. Even today this is so.
Do human beings also live there?
Sure, but they are not life forms brought forth by these worlds. On primordial worlds, there are no human life forms yet, because these usually only come into being at much later times. We are not aware of any primeval world that is inhabited by dinosaurs and human life forms at the same time.
I didn't know that. But as you say, human beings still live there on Neighbor. Is this an exception to the rule?
No, because those life forms were transplanted there. The human beings on Niebuhr no longer correspond to the actual evolved life forms of this species, for they are feral and degenerate. In the course of several millennia, they have evolved into wild beings, as was also once the case on Earth. On the world Nibiru, the reason is that two different human races from two different galaxies had established research bases on the planet and lived there during many years and explored this world. As on Earth, they built pyramids and were thus protected by solid walls from the hostile and rampant environment. However, due to a cosmic catastrophe, one day the homeworld of one race was destroyed, and so the human beings living on Niebuhr could not go back. The homeworld of the second race fell to an unknown deadly epidemic, and all life forms were destroyed by it. So the human beings of the second race stationed on Niebuhr also found no way back and decided to stay on the planet. In the tropical humid climate, all their technological devices were slowly destroyed and rotted away over time. The human beings had to watch this decay bitterly and could only hope that another space race would soon appear and save them. But this was not so, and it was not until nearly 3,000 years later highly developed life forms appeared again on Niebuhr. During this long wait, the space travelers stationed there died. Their descendants, however, slowly became savage and primitive, and slowly adapted consciously and physically to the savage and barbaric world. They reverted to savage primitive humans, whose descendants still live on Niebuhr today.
But then how is it with you and other highly evolved life forms in the universe? Do you or others also bring euthanasia into use?
Certainly, it is applied everywhere, and in those cases where there is no possibility of any change for the better. But these possibilities are much greater in relation to the earthly ones.
Are you saying that you can cure irreparability?
In certain cases, yes.
Have you worked out these possibilities of a cure yourselves?
Only partially, because as is usual in the universe, we have received help in this regard from higher evolved life forms.
I was talking to Simyase earlier regarding help, etc., between different life forms in the universe. Can you tell me more about that? Specifically, I would be interested in the cooperation between different life forms for once.
Are you thinking of cultural cooperation between the different life forms?
Yes, but also in every other relationship. And what about cooperation between the life forms of this universe and other universes?
Our worlds are not divided into different states as on Earth. Each world has a unified people and a unified world government, as you call it in earthly terms. On every world, the government acts as a force of order and execution, and these are all subject to the High Council in voluntary form. This High Council forms the actual leadership of all our worlds, that is, the central government, so to speak. This, however, is not located on our home world, but on a very special planet. This is the central star of government for our races. The High Council that lives on this planet is made up of semi-spiritual, semi-material life forms. So these are human life forms of quite enormous knowledge and wisdom who are in the stage of transition to the first pure spirit form, the level of Arahat Athersata. This means that they have already progressed so far in their evolution that they have got rid of the pure material body and are already half spiritual and therefore also only half material. They are also the only life forms that can still be called half-human and are able to make contact with the first high pure spirit forms, which is absolutely impossible for pure material life forms. Not even we ourselves are able to make contact with these or even higher pure spirit forms. Consequently, this can be done even less by Earth humans. So also our High Council had to contact the Arahat Athersata plane at our request in order to initiate its transmissions to you. Hence, you see that an Earth human being can never communicate with high spirit forms in a purely spiritual or consciousness sense, let alone that an Earth human being could communicate with them or even with high spirit planes. As an example of this, take your own person and ourselves. You, as we are very high in spiritual values above the values of all Earth humans. But also, we are not able to connect or communicate with Arahat Athersata's level. Through the mediations of the High Council, we, like I, are able to receive the transmissions from these high planes, but that is all we can do. Like you, we are also not yet able to ask any questions or give any answers to these high planes. And just like you, we are also a receiving system without any transmission capability. The swinging waves of the spiritual planes are simply far too high for us to be able to generate them within ourselves. This is really only reserved for life forms that already exist in semi-spiritual form themselves. Our peoples, then, are all subject to the central government formed by the semi-material, semi-spiritual High Council. The planetary governments, then, are only executive organs of the High Council's order. The form of government of the High Council rests in the creational and natural laws and recommendations, and is therefore not a form of government known to you. Purely creative and natural laws are applied to all events and all order, according to which every single life form is also consciously directed. Thus, every single decision of the High Council is ordered in accordance with the thought form of each individual life form. This, however, implies that each individual life form has approximately the same state of evolution in spiritual and consciousness terms, although minor deviations cannot be excluded. Our teachers of spiritual evolution, however, strive with all the means at their disposal for the constant development of the consciousness and spirit of each individual life form, whereby all our peoples live in approximately equal swinging waves. So much for our own peoples. Throughout the universe, space travel is practiced by innumerable different life forms, by humanoid but not always very humane races. On the whole, however, the like or like-minded always come together and enter into alliances with each other. The values of these alliances are geared to mutual help in every respect, so also to the relations of all things evolutionary. This is a wonderful cooperation in all aspects of life, which even reaches into other universes, such as the Tao universe, in which you have now also been. All alliances, whether universal, interuniversal, galactic, or intergalactic, are oriented towards peace, towards progress in all material aspects of life, and towards evolution of the spirit. In all this, however, struggle is not excluded, for battle-seeking or inhumane life forms appear again and again, and according to their forms, exercise violence. These must of course be countered. This leads now and then to fighting, and to the destruction of life forms and materials, etc. As alliances exist between different life forms, therefore, law and order services are established to monitor the entire inhabited space. These services of order are carried out with great spacers such as mine. These are actually great spacer stations, which are equipped with all conceivable technological possibilities, in order to drive away possibly appearing enemies, or, if necessary, to destroy all their material so that they are bound to their planets. With these great spacers, a service of order is thus maintained which extends over many systems of galaxies. Fundamentally, all highly evolved life forms are concerned to devote themselves in a peaceful frame of mind only to the spiritual evolution and to the advancement of the technology, of the consciousness, and of the knowledge, etc. But since this universe, like many other universes, is animated by very many kinds of life forms, it cannot fail that struggle is also a part of life. But wherever it is possible, no life-killing eliminations of life forms and also no eliminations of materials, etc., take place, for every life form requires its evolution, and fundamentally this always proceeds in the same manner in its very many stages. As low as Earth humans and many other life forms in the innumerable universes are today in their spiritual development, etc., so low were our very early ancestors, from whom Earth humans are actually also descended. Apart from us, there are various other life forms of extraterrestrial origin that make contact with Earth humans now and then, and thus only extremely rarely and often only in an emergency. In earlier times, this happened much more often, which also had its reasons. This was due to the fact that in earlier times, by which I mean several millennia, very many Earth humans still knew of the existence of the celestial suns. They were in regular contact with them and also traded with them. However, through the intervention of various malevolent elements, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial, these contacts slackened, and gradually the knowledge of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligences was lost. Secretly, however, malignant intelligences of masses addicted to world domination created their station on Earth and on a neighboring planet and upgraded the cultic religions. This was all done in secret and with the use of many evil means. Apart from these machinations, however, there existed undertakings of other and not evil intelligences, which endeavored to bring about the real evolution of Earth humans, because these were, after all, descended from them. But since they could not officially appear because of the constant danger from the malignant life forms, they had to do so secretly. Besides, after so many millennia, Earth humans could not be expected to suddenly appear officially again with beam ships and spaceships, for the knowledge of them had been lost to them. A sudden open reappearance would have caused worldwide panic. Then the SOL system moved into the Age of Pisces, and this offered all interested extraterrestrials a new opportunity to intervene in earthly events without the human beings being able to notice it. The cultic religions built up by the malignant intelligences offered the best conditions for this. Since it was no longer possible to approach Earth humans with logic and truth, the most subtle truths were smuggled into cultic religious stories and spread all over the Earth. This offered the possibility of paving the way for the truth and spreading it via cultic religion. Even before the Age of Pisces, therefore, prophets were also chosen to work in this sense and to do justice to the creational truth. Then, at the beginning of the Piscean Age, the prophet Emmanuel was chosen, who then spread the teaching truthfully and unwritten in understandable words of the time. Later, however, it was again maliciously falsified, as had been the teaching of the prophets of old. With Emmanuel's work, however, a time had finally come again when extraterrestrial intelligences could once more increasingly make contact with Earth humans. However, the inveterate cultic religions chose the beam ships and spaceships as celestial vehicles for religious purposes, so that once again there was nothing left but to let the truth seep through very slowly through the religions. Thus, extraterrestrials practically aided and abetted the malignant earthly cult religions in order to be able to serve the truth, for they had no other possibility. Earth humans had already reached the point where, if extraterrestrials had officially appeared, they would have engaged in acts of war against them, but this had to be avoided at all costs. There would have been the possibility of influencing consciousness. But as you know, this is forbidden by important directives, because no life form may be illogically interfered with by force if it concerns any matters of development. So these factors meant that landings with beam ships and spaceships could only be carried out secretly. But contacts with Earth humans had to remain just a secret. Then came the first labor pains of the Aquarian Age, and suddenly Earth humans began to listen within. But he or she also began to think and to investigate, and suddenly he or she realized that logic was to be found only in truth. He or she realized that in seeing and hearing there was a lot of deception and only rarely the truth. Thus, in a very short time, he or she developed their faculties of reasoning and searched inquiringly for logic and truth through conscious learning and thought work. This, however, is a marked characteristic of the Aquarian Age, and to this characteristic, all wisdom-knowing intelligences adhere. And this, among other things, is also one of the main reasons why extraterrestrial life forms only reveal themselves to certain individual Earth humans, upon whom they impose certain tasks which they can carry out according to their knowledge and their concepts, if at all. Until now, these tasks had to be woven into religious phrases in order to make them accessible to Earth humans. But now these times are over, and the truth must be spread as the truth really is. If, however, Earth humans again bring contact reports of alleged extraterrestrials in religious form, then they are guilty of lying, and they lead back to their own delusions and unreal machinations, as well as to the world dominion addicted. Malignant intelligences or to earthly religious machinations and delusions in this respect of some misguided Earth humans. 885. The present time of the Aquarian era demands the thinking of the human beings of Earth and the evolution of consciousness and spirit. These factors, however, cannot be attained by seeing and hearing with the physical organs concerned, but only by reason and understanding. Therefore, if we were to make an official appearance with our beamships and spaceships, the effect of thinking and researching would be annihilated. For a life form, such as the Earth human in his or her present stage of evolution, still thinks and researches in spite of everything in the form that everything is real to him or her, that he or she can see with their eyes and hear with their ears, or that they can touch. We do not claim to know everything or even to be omniscient, but we are accurately oriented about all those matters that are connected with Earth, its life forms, and extraterrestrial intelligences. Our technology is the highest and most advanced of all life forms that visit the Earth. This technology is therefore also what guarantees us the best possible control, so that nothing can actually escape us that is connected with Earth humans and extraterrestrial intelligences, at least in those earthly areas that we are currently monitoring. If, therefore, I explain to you that only 3 life forms of terrestrial origin have been flown out into space by beamships in this century. This corresponds to absolute reality, for it is precisely for such occurrences that the best precautions have been taken on all sides in order to be able to control them with the utmost precision. It is therefore absolutely impossible that an Earth life form, an Earth human being, should be allowed to experience a flight into space through us without our being oriented about it. And when I speak of us, I am thinking not only of our own race, but of all extraterrestrial life forms that move in earthly space. They are indeed different, and some of them even have a quite low level of development. Admittedly, we are not in direct contact with all of them because certain factors do not allow us to do so. But we have contact with several of them and partly work together. However, they are mostly all known to us, but so are their technical and consciousness-based possibilities. This allows us to include them with extreme precision in our controls, so that with absolute certainty, nothing of their doing can escape us. We are always precisely oriented about every undertaking, and it is impossible that our devices and apparatus would not register something. Of course, from time to time, there are strangers with whom we do not come into contact, and whose origin we also cannot clarify. However, these are rare cases. In addition to these evil life forms, there are also extraterrestrials who abduct Earth humans from time to time, which Meier has also told you about. However, these cases are relatively so rare that they are hardly worth mentioning, although the abductees usually never return to the Earth. But here again, there are exceptions that are extremely rare and hardly worth mentioning. Most of the time, the abductors are time and space aberrations who only arrive to the Earth through their ignorance, through technical damage, or through irrationality. On the other hand, however, there are also some inhumane races to whom Earth, when they discover it, means a welcome expedition planet where they rob life forms of various kinds, but this is just as rare that it should not really be mentioned. Our weapons are in any case always intended only for defense but never for attack. Neither we nor any other life form in this or any other universe can afford to have no or unsuitable weapons. Every single life form race in the universe has weapons of all kinds, just as you do on Earth. Even outside Earth, there is not only peace, for the most diverse and innumerable worlds in the universe are inhabited by the most varied life forms of humanoid and sometimes non-humanoid form. Many of them have not yet entered the state of equilibrium and use their weapons to attack other life forms. However, these cannot and must not simply allow themselves to be exterminated and slaughtered, but must fight back. This is a law of the creation, which is extremely recognizable in the laws of nature. If the Earth human being observes the events of nature with just a little interest, he or she will recognize that the first instinct inherent in every individual life form is the instinct of self-preservation, just as it is determined by the laws of nature.
But now I am interested in how far away from the Earth or the SOL system the closest inhabited system is located. And do those worlds' inhabitants also know our Earth?
The next inhabited system is located about 5 light-years away from the Earth, but in a different space-time structure. Different worlds over there are inhabited by human life forms, who barely differ from you. Regarding their development, they are several years ahead of the humans of the Earth, in consciousness-based as well as technological terms. The difference between the humans of the Earth and those life forms, which is, however, just one of several over there, amounts to 217 years. They are already capable of space flights in primitive form and also visit Earth quite often. Because their cosmic flight capabilities, however, are still very limited, they depend on assistance stations. Midway between their world and the Earth, they have thus established such a space station, which you can see over there far out in space. They need this station, as they are not yet able to catapult their spaceships across large distances. Also, their spaceflight is still associated with great physical pains. That's why they send themselves to sleep with narcotics during longer travels through space. Besides other races from those worlds, this race comes to Earth very often through an old dimension gate. That's because their home world, which is no bigger than the Earth, is with a very high number of humans suffering from overpopulation and needing enormous quantities of food. Thus, the humans from planet Akart come very often to the Earth to collect plants, vegetables, fruits, and cereals, etc., in order to feed their 23,000 million population with it. However, they collect relatively little usable food, as they know that your world also suffers from a strong overpopulation and has a lack of usable food. So they usually content themselves with taking fruit, grain, vegetables, and plant seedlings and seeds along with them, for cultivating them on AKART and letting them flourish. Actual ready-for-use food they collect on other worlds, which they visit often or even regularly. In and of itself, these life forms are of a quite peaceful nature, because they have had to endure and suffer a lot during the last centuries. Today, they live under a dictatorship, as you would call it, by which they are doing pretty well. Their big problem is nevertheless the tremendous overpopulation, which they can only solve by making uninhabited worlds their own, that they can afterwards populate. Their gyroscopic technology is, however, not yet allowing this, so some time will pass, before them being able to emigrate their masses of folk.
That is already a lot, but are other life forms from that system also coming to the Earth? And why are they not helping this overpopulated race?
The others also come from time to time through the old dimensions gate to the Earth, but this happens actually rather rarely. The reason for them not helping the overpopulated race is that this life form has not yet progressed far enough in its development. In order to provide them with bigger technological and other assistance and opportunities. These humans are also still too addicted to the material and worldly for granting them greater power.
How do you see your appearance on Earth? When will you officially land and show yourselves to the human beings?
From our side, this is not planned for a long time, but also not from many others. On the contrary, it will be the case that almost all extraterrestrials will withdraw from your planet again when certain circumstances arise. This will be when a race, as yet unknown to you, sets out from space to visit Earth. Our probability calculations have shown that this will have to happen well after the turn of the millennium, unless aberrant factors arise between now and then, thereby calling this foreseen enterprise into question. However, if these negative factors do not occur, Earth humans will have their first official encounter with life forms of other worlds at this coming time after the millennium change. The appearance of these space travelers is not yet certain, however, for there are still many factors that must first come to pass on the Earth. Misled by the unreasonableness of Earth humans and by the lies of alleged contactees, these alien life forms will first spread great terror on Earth. But there will be no danger from these human life forms, for they will be peaceful and harmless, and they will teach Earth humans peace. Their culture and their spiritual and consciousness-based level will be very superior to the Earth humans, and so they will also not simply land unexpectedly on Earth. First, they will announce their coming through open contacts and prepare the Earth humans for it, before they really appear and land with one of their strange ships, which will be occupied by 8 to 12 life forms. The time to come will show whether all can be thus fulfilled. If Earth humans and their doings necessarily change for the better by then, otherwise all will fail or be postponed to a later time.
That is very interesting, but where will they end up, if at all?
It will not indeed be America with certainty, but it is possible.
Always this America? Why only?
It is because the best technological conditions of communication to space are offered there. The population of this country, in connection with the awareness about extraterrestrial life forms, etc., and about their existence, is also the most prepared by the film industry to be able to survive an official appearance without too much panic. Even if the coming of the extraterrestrials is usually portrayed extremely negatively and often creates fear and terror.
That is plausible. But surely there are other possibilities besides America, right?
I am sure there are, but I am just explaining what our probability calculations have shown so far.
That will be very good when this official landing finally happens.
It will even be of revolutionary importance if this landing can really be carried out. But this is really only dependent on the negative factors which may come into play under certain circumstances, which unfortunately is still to be expected so far. So, however, it is not yet certain whether the events will take place in this manner, because I do not take this information from a view of the future, but from our vague calculations of probability.
So it's still open then?
That is indeed so, yes, because everything is still extremely uncertain.
But can you explain to me where these life forms come from?
I am not authorized to give information about that in an official form. It is in connection with the Earth-human development when the mentioned life forms land on Earth. It must therefore be clear to rational Earth humans that we only serve the truth and do not indulge in lies.